Hello, my name is John. Welcome to my Gamester81 channel. And in this review, I'll be talking about the Mattel Aquarius. This is like a vintage computer, came out by Mattel in the early 80s. It didn't sell very well, and it only lasted for a short bit, hence making it kind of hard to find today. It's still an interesting part of computer history and even gaming history today. So let's take a closer look at the system itself. Let's talk about how it came to be and how it came to pass so quickly. Here is the box itself, the huge box. It's pretty big, doesn't even fit into a single screenshot. But as you can see, you got the logo here, Aquarius. You got by Mattel Electronics. Briefly, Mattel Electronics was a division of Mattel, and it started in 1979. They actually came out with the Intellivision, pretty successful line of home systems for video games. And unfortunately, the crash in 1983 hurt them, and they actually folded, they closed the doors in 1984. So they went from hiring a whole bunch of people, and within weeks they let them all go, a lot of them go. But it's very short-lived, only 5 years as far as the company goes, but they made some great video games. And Mattel will later in 2006 release a thing called the Hyperscan, another home market system for video games, and that was more gear for kids. I did a review on that a little while ago. But as far as the box goes, you can see here's what the Aquarius computer looks like. It comes with this attachment here. I'll explain what that is. These are the games. They're kind of funny shaped games. It comes with 2 control pads, and apparently this bundle came with 4 games. I don't have those games. I will have a few of them. I don't have them all. You got Tron, Deadly Disc, Utopia, Snafu, and Astro Smash. So it's kind of strange names for these games. You can see here they're very old school, early 80s shot of them playing the computer. They're playing these games. There's some screenshots on the back. Is basically the same thing, it's just upside down. And within this box, you actually have 2 other boxes, so let me show you those. So here is the external box for the computer itself, the basic computer, and very similar to a Texas Instruments TI-99 4A computer back in the day. You actually could expand to this. You could add a mini expander, which I'll show you in a second, which would allow you to play games. You can plug in controllers, remotes, and you can increase your memory for the computer. Additionally, they had a thermal computer that you could purchase, it's pretty hard to find from what I understand. Very rare today, but they had that. They had a cassette. You could hook up cassette players to this. You can back up your programs on your cassette through the recorder. Okay. And I love this on the side here. I mean, this is totally 80s right here. I love these old school pictures. That's so funny. And on the back, you can see here it is. That's the printer I was talking about, the thermal printer. And that's the mini expander. The controllers and graphics are equivalent to the Intellivision, probably a little bit less. I'll go more into detail about the games later in the video. Here is the mini expander. As I mentioned before, it basically allows you to turn it into a gaming console because of 2 remotes. You got the 2 slots here, one for expanded memory. The computer itself only had 4 kilobytes of memory, which is a RAM, which is amazing. Amazingly low in today's standards anyway. But you could put a cartridge there to expand it to 20 kilobytes of RAM. It also comes with a slot for you can put games in there. Only 32 games were actually announced for this, but you know what? Unfortunately, only 21 were ever released. It was a very short-lived computer. Didn't last very long. And it also, what makes this expander interesting is actually added some added sound to it as well. So the sound is actually, it's called the GI-AY38914, and basically it's the same thing as the Intellivision that would have. So the same sound as the Intellivision. Without this, you wouldn't really have much sound through the computer. On the back, it just shows you another picture of the computer itself. Now let's put these boxes away, set these aside, and let's take a closer look at the actual computer. Here is the computer itself. You got the nice Aquarius logo in the bottom right corner. This is what they call a chiclet keyboard, meaning it's rubber keys. It's not gum or anything like that. I always think of chiclets when I think of gum, but that's it. That's a keyboard there, a rubber keyboard. This is the expansion, the mini expander. This actually just comes out like so, and it pops back in like that. It just snaps right in. This is your power button right there, the power icon right there. On the side, you have your on-off switch. And on the back, as you can see, this is the AC adapter is hardwired on there. I'm not a big fan of that because if this ever gets frayed or or broken, you're not going to have any luck really fixing it or repairing it. You know, if it was a case where it could come out, you could actually get another adapter for it. So that's hardwired in there. You get the RF connector. So the idea was these would actually hook up to a TV, not a necessarily monitor, but a TV. And you had your channel 3 forward, like kind of like an NES. You could switch between channel 3 or 4. You also got a cassette thing right here. This is where you would hook up your cassette expander right there. You get your printer on to the left of that. And right here is where the controllers would plug into. There's a 9-pin controller port, very similar to a Genesis or Atari 2600. Speaking of controllers, these are what they look like. These are the controller pads. Now, these will not work on the Intellivision system, only because the Intellivision system, most models are actually, the controllers are hardwired into the system themselves. The only model I can really think of that aren't are, you got the Sears Super Video 2 system. You also have the Intellivision 2, which those you actually take out, and I'm fairly sure those are also 9-pin, so they most likely would work on the system, and conversely vice versa. But you got the buttons here, your option buttons. These are used to select your programs, or you know, in some game cases you can use them as action buttons. This is your directional pad. I'm not a big fan of this. This is like a disc, and it rotates. It's kind of hard and flimsy to kind of see where you're moving to. Not a big fan of it. I wish they had like some kind of joystick or something you could attach to that, but very small, and it says Hong Kong 1982. So that kind of leads me into what I want to talk about the system itself and when it came out. It came out in June 1983, retailed for $160 US. In today's standards, that's not very much. Back then, it was quite a bit more, but it was still cheaper than what Commodore was charging for the VIC-20 and what Atari was charging for the 800 computer. Two of the main competitors in the computer market during this time. You also had Commodore 64, you had Coleco Atom computer. So there's a ton of hands in the cookie jar, so to speak, when it comes to classic vintage computers. And unfortunately, Mattel was unable to capture the market. And 4 months later, in October 1983, they pulled the plug. They said, you know what, this is not going to work. They actually pulled the plug, which is really, really surprising because can you imagine putting all this money into the research and development of a product and 4 months later pulling the plug on it? It's really surprising. But what Mattel did, it was actually they contracted through a Hong Kong company, hence that's why you saw Hong Kong on the back of this controller here, and it was a company was called Radofin. And they actually contracted them, and Radofin was going to develop these two computers. They actually came out with two different types of computers. They called checkers, and one was called chess. So basically, checkers was a more advanced model, and chess was a more basic model. And they later on changed the names to the Aquarius, being checkers, with the basic. And you also had chess, which was the Aquarius 2. The Aquarius 2 did hit the market eventually, but by that time, Mattel didn't really have anything to do with it. The only really significant difference is it came with built-in 20 kilobytes of memory instead of 4 as this one does. And you don't have these rubber keyboards. You actually have like a real keyboard, which is nice, plastic button stuff, which is nice. So it's upgraded. Again, that was very short-lived, and those are super, super hard to find, and only a handful ever really reached the market. So what Mattel ended up doing is, in October of 1983, they actually sold back the marketing rights to Radofin, and 4 other companies got involved into helping distribute this computer. And those companies are the following. You have Caesar Industries, you have Cyrac Inc., you have New Era Incentives, and you have Bentley Industries. And those 4 got together, and they actually helped continue the line of the Aquarius. It didn't last for very long. Only 2 of those companies are still around today. You got the Bentley Industries, which is not like the car, it's a different company. And you also have a New Era Incentives. Those are still around, but they have nothing really to do with the Aquarius anymore. I think the one main thing about the computer that really killed it, and the Achilles heel of it all, is that the graphics weren't nearly as good as the Intellivision. Whereas you had ColecoVision, they had the add-in computer. You actually could play Coleco games in the add-in computer, and in most cases, the games were a lot better graphically and sound. Same is true with the Atari. You had the 800 computer, you had the 2600, and games were much better on the computer than it was on the home console. Where in this case, the games are much better on the Intellivision. So why would you go and cough up $160 and get a computer where you had less graphical power, you had the same sound, but the graphics were not good? And the main problem that is because this computer lacked the programmable graphics, where the Intellivision had. You couldn't do that with this. So most of the 21 games that were released were actually ports from the Intellivision. There weren't very many exclusives. I'll say this is actually what the cartridges look like. This is Biorhythms. That sounds fun. That's more of a program. And you also have Tron Deadly Disc. We're going to check out some gameplay here in a second, but I mean, just kind of disappointing that they would come up with this. In fact, Mattel, a lot of the programmers, a lot of workers for Mattel during this time, they actually called this the computer of the 70s. They thought it was more of an old. It was basically not really up to par with the 80s, and it was, if this was released 5 years earlier, it probably done really well in the late 70s. But unfortunately, there were so many people in the computer market as well, and of course Apple was, had the Apple computer, so there's a ton of computers back in the early 80s, and the consumer got really confused, and they're just, it was crazy. I want to wrap up with just a brief history of Mattel as a company. We talked about Mattel Electronics, which only lasted 5 years or so, but Mattel has been around as a company since 1945. In fact, it's the largest toy manufacturer today as far as revenue is concerned, and most of their lines, they own Fisher-Price. They also were huge with Masters of the Universe figures. It was started by two guys, Harold Matson and Elliot Handler, and what they did is they took their names. Harold Matson actually went by Matt, and he got Elliot, and what they did is they took their name, Matt, L, the two first initials from Elliot, and they put it together and they became Mattel. And it wasn't until Ruth, Elliot's wife, in 1959 came out with a Barbie line. And Barbie's huge for girls, obviously, even today. Huge line's been around since 1959, and that's a huge moneymaker for them. Another interesting fact about Mattel is during 1986 to 1990, in Canada, they helped Nintendo distribute a lot of the systems and games for Nintendo until Nintendo really established themselves as a major distributor themselves. Also, they did the same thing in Australia and UK for a little bit, with helping Nintendo with distributing the games and systems for Nintendo. So that's kind of an interesting fact. But let's take a closer look at some gameplay for the Aquarius and go from there. Here is Tron Deadly Disc. It is actually a port from the Intellivision. It was Walt Disney and Mattel. 1982 is when the original game came out. This is obviously released after the computer came out in 1983. So let's start here. So I'm this blue guy in the middle. My object is to fire this disc and then kill these guys in the red. This is actually a port from the arcade, but it's not nearly as known as the original Tron. Got him on the left there. Oh, more coming. Gets more difficult. Not much sound to this game. They keep coming. It's really hard to control where my disc is going. So much is going on. I want to avoid those red things, if they're those discs that they're throwing at me. Nice, I got him. Nice. I'll be honest, I've never played the arcade port of this. Oh, I got all three of them, or all of them. Now there's three more. It's just kind of... Oh, come on. Nice. Oh, sick, I hit. And the thing is, you only have one life in this game. And it's over. There's no way that I know that you can reset this. You have to actually reset the computer to start over. Only one life, so I got 350 as a high score. That's so lame. I don't understand that at all. But that is Tron Deadly Disc. Okay, next is Utopia. It says 1982, but I think this game came out in 1981 for the Intellivision. This is a direct port from the Intellivision. In terms of office, this is how many rounds pretty much we're going to go. Let's do 30 rounds. Length of round, let's do 60 seconds. So basically, I'm in this thing moving around here. It's I don't know, it's red, and then I go over land. It's green. But you're supposed to build stuff. There, I put in some crops. That on the middle there, that's the time limit. The timer is 47 seconds left. Above that is how many terms. So the object is kind of like SimCity, where there's a factory I built. You're supposed to build stuff and make people happy, and that's how you accumulate points. It's nothing too exciting, but this game sold fairly well. See, I hit that, that means I'm... It's hard. I don't have the overlays for this game, so I don't really know what button does what. You can see there's like a, I don't know what that is supposed to be, but maybe a snowstorm or something. Pretty crude and basic. I mean, this is before graphics were huge, obviously. But my money, you can see I don't have enough money for it. I have $21 left. He has my guy here has 100. I guess this is 2-player, and I'm only playing 1 player on this, so kind of an interesting game. You can kind of get the idea. The graphics are kind of like the Intellivision, not quite as good. Sound is not nearly as good either. Something happened. Okay, that's the end of turn 1. I didn't get much money. I only got $21. I can't really build much. I'm already out. So now I got to wait 54 seconds left to get to the next round. And there's invaders that can come in and take over your country and all that, which I think is what's going on with my partner over here. So, but anyway, those are the 2 games I wanted to show you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. We'll see you soon. Take care.